We are live once again. I apologize. The internet went out. So it was a scramble. I'm back on live again. I do apologize. That hasn't happened to us for about 7 months. So it's the holidays. Everybody's at home using stuff in the neighborhood. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. We're going to get to your phone calls right now. Hopefully ACC sabotage. Tony's A's Army got him sniped. Yeah, that hasn't happened in a long time, so I'm not too upset. I kind of understand the situation. We'll see what happens. Thank you all for coming on in again. I appreciate it. I think I got to the end of the monologue, right? So we're not going to go through that again. That was part one. This is titled part two. So for those who are just showing up, if you missed the monologue, go watch part one, then jump back into part two. But we're going to get to phone calls right now. Again, I do apologize. 763-260-1333. And I probably missed Tony Altmore. Don't like you talk about his chart. Again, I wasn't really, thank you for the super chat, John. I wasn't really, I wasn't mean about it. I just saying, they didn't give you the lay of the land the first time around. They're not going to give you the lay of the land the second time around. One other thing is, the charts would be even more useful if we weren't having this incredible change in college football, in college athletics, right? The stuff that's going on now, past history, endowment money, whatever, schools are climbing together, not because of the traditional reasons of years gone by. Things have changed. So anyways, thank you, John, for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Again, the phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333. I think I got through the monologue before we lost connection. Hopefully we did. Let's see here. I think everything's still working. Yeah, we're back. I think we're back. Super chats from part one. I apologize. I do apologize. I was doing my monologue. I did not see him. I was going to get to him.
Call from
Nathan Brown.
Nathan Brown, Big 12 Mafia. This is the best part of the show anyways, when you guys call. So go ahead, Nathan. What's on your mind? The floor is yours.
So I just have one question about Miami. I've always felt Miami was the most flexible opportunity to leave because they are a private school. So is this part of this? They're getting out in front of this. In other words, they want to be proactive, find a home sooner before the boat leaves and it's all full up, because in my mind, the math works out. There's only 5 plus Notre Dame spots to leave the ACC. I can't mix and match any other numbers past 6. So I think Miami wants to make sure they're one of those 6. Are you hearing that, Greg?
No, I don't. Them going to the front row of the Holy Smokes Theater doesn't have to do with their aggressiveness. In fact, the president is being pretty conservative about this. They're not. Their boosters, on the other hand, are being. They're a little bit more aggressive than the other boosters out there. But no, Miami of Florida is in the first row because Fox Sports is in their corner, like they were with Oregon.
And is Miami the only one of those that is outside of North Carolina that has that Fox guarantee behind them?
No, I mean, obviously Notre Dame, North Carolina, the number 1, 2 targets of the Big Ten.
Right.
And same with the SEC. Florida State, there's interest in Florida State. I think, but I would think, for example, if Notre Dame and North Carolina are not available to the Big Ten for one or more reasons, right? And Florida State, it strikes a deal. They get out of here with a decent price point. They make a deal with the Big Ten. Fox would then go to bat for Miami of Florida.
Okay.
The Miami of Florida and the Florida State combo is something that Florida State, that Fox Sports would support. Look, it isn't like Miami of Florida has punched the head of Florida State, for example.
Right.
But it's important to acknowledge the conversations that we've had. It's important to acknowledge that Miami of Florida has the backing. They bring value to Fox Sports. Now, again, there's other variables involved in all this, right? But
of course,
it was very important that Oregon had the backing, and I think this is great news for Miami of Florida. They have the backing of Fox Sports. This is what the national advertisers would want. They could bring in some different national advertisers. This is something that they would want.
So then the second half of my question, then, outside of Miami, is the 4 North Carolinas and Virginias, right?
Yeah.
Virginia Tech and North Carolina State. Are there any current legal proceedings going in those states that would indicate it would strengthen those relationships? They have to be bilateral, or is it just going off of what has already been built? In other words, has any more legal work been done to ensure that those 4 stay together, or the 2 and 2 stay together?
Sure. Well, I haven't heard anything about Virginia and Virginia Tech. We know they are entangled politically. I expect there to be. In fact, I'm a little surprised there hasn't been big time articles, reports out there yet, but I expect that to be happening in regards to Virginia and Virginia Tech. As you know, the Virginia president was part of the Jim Phillips statement. He's the co-chairman.
Right.
So I don't expect anything coming out of there. And then the North Carolina State situation is incredibly interesting. There was a proposal, the Board of Governors, a proposal in October that hasn't passed yet. But if it passes, that would mean that North Carolina, for example, if they wanted to go to the SEC, if things imploded, Florida State was successful enough, let's just say there's a $200 million, $250 million price point, whatever, North Carolina jumps in. North Carolina would have to, if the proposal passes, it hasn't yet, but if it does, they would have to submit a financial plan, an exit plan to the university, to North Carolina's system president, and his name is Peter Hans. He oversees not just North Carolina, but 15 other public institutions in the state of North Carolina. One of them being North Carolina State. So he has to look at the interest of North Carolina State. So what I would advise for everybody to watch for, if North Carolina State wants that proposal to pass, they want it to pass, because if it does, that gets to your question of North Carolina State they can kind of tie their hips to North Carolina at that point. North Carolina, people who want them to have better freedom, access to join the SEC or the Big Ten, they don't want that proposal to pass. They don't want, because in that proposal, the North Carolina system chancellor, he has power over this, over the conference affiliation decision.
Okay.
And by the way, he's the same guy who named the interim chancellor to North Carolina, who we have been told is pro-SEC. I'm guessing right now, Nathan, this is just a guess on our point, but I'm guessing the proposal doesn't pass.
Right.
I think the faction who want North Carolina have the ability, the freedom, the space to separate themselves. There's going to be more hurdles in the state of North Carolina politically, but just in this avenue with this proposal, I think there's people behind the scenes that are working for North Carolina be able to move, to be nimble enough to move if the opportunity arises. And right now it's advantage SEC, the faction that's leading North Carolina.
It's just so amazing. This is such a science, and we're all learning at your feet, Greg. Thank you so much for your time.
You got it.
Keep up the good work with your shows, and we're here for you. Merry Christmas.
Appreciate it. Merry Christmas, Nathan. Thank you so very much. Great phone call. Hopefully everything's still working. Thank you, Nathan. Great phone call. Stephen McNeely, Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your continued generosity, Stephen, to the channel, your contributions and everything. Thank you so very much. The odds are very low that we're going to be doing a live show come tomorrow and the next day. December 26th, Tuesday, we're probably going to load up again. We do have the Minnesota Golden Gophers football game. 5-7 Minnesota in a bowl game. So December 26th will probably load up. So this is the night. This is the opportunity for people to call, put out what you're thinking is going on here in college football. You could talk about anything in college football. Malik Murphy has committed to Duke. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for Duke, baby. They move on. Riley Leonard goes to Notre Dame. And Malik Murphy goes to Duke. That's a pretty good replacement. That's pretty good. And then, of course, you got Mike Denbrock, new offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, coming from LSU. Holy smokes. Notre Dame has had a very, very good off season. And are way too early. Crazy too early. 12-team playoff prediction that we already done in the middle of the transfer portal, which is crazy. We have Notre Dame as number 5, the top at-large team in the playoffs. Remember, they can't grab one of the top 4 spots in the 12-team playoffs because they're not going to be ranked as one of the top 4 conference champions. So they're going to be number 5, right? Man, and now they just got the offensive coordinator they wanted. everything is looking good for Notre Dame. They've had an incredible offseason. Expedition Greg, what's up with the Holy Smokes Theater? Thank you for the super chat, Greg. Unfortunately, I did my monologue. That's part 1. We just did it. Then we lost internet connection. So this is part 2. So go back and watch part 1. I'll just go through it real quick. There's a movement. Holy Smokes Theater. Miami is sitting in the first row with North Carolina. And the reason for that is Fox Sports is in their corner, just like they were with Oregon. Now, people might say, well, great. Do you know that for sure? How do you know that? Well, in the same manner.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, Mr. Hawkeye, the floor is yours. I just want to finish a thought here. In the same manner, we knew that Fox Sports was in Oregon's corner. Immaculate, go ahead. Merry Christmas and everything. Happy holidays. What do you got to say, Mr. Hawkeye?
Well, not a whole lot. I'm just kind of curious about this Miami angle.
Yeah.
And how, so is this something that Fox is maybe pushing, or is this something that was maybe brought to them and they said, this is what we think about it? Like, was it more advisory, or was it more kind of pushing? Can you say that?
I wouldn't call it a push. I would call it an acknowledgement. Like, the Big Ten knows what Fox Sports would want out of this. If North Carolina and everybody's prepping, right? Everybody's prepping.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word that was used today. I haven't used that word. That's everyone's getting their ducks in. Everyone's kind of analyzing the situation. How much? What are we willing to do? What are the Big Ten presidents willing to do? Blah, 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 blah. There's a whole lot of variables, as you know, Immaculate. Nobody knows it better than you. There's a whole lot of variables to this. But one of these things is, if the Big Ten, if their opportunity doesn't come with North Carolina, it may. But right now, it kind of looks kind of iffy, right? If Notre Dame doesn't get off the blocks because, they want to stay independent, they think they can for another 6 years, they're in no rush, okay? There's going to be a whole lot of at-large bids in the playoffs, okay, all right? So if the opportunity rises for the Big Ten to get to the Southeast, Florida State is there. Who would be a really good combo with Florida State? It's Miami of Florida, Fox Sports. That's an acknowledgement, right? That is part of the process, the decision making on the prepping of what's about to happen.
That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
I would think that Fox would be way more high on Clemson than they would Miami.
Fox wants to satisfy their advertisers. And the advertisers would want Miami.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of extra storyline around that. You can draw a lot of attention to that by people who aren't even really tied to college football. I mean, I guess I get that, the advertising side, because once it started to go, I was going in, I was looking at local areas, looking at the campuses, and I'm even less impressed by Miami, but I get that a lot of this is being brand driven and, as you're saying, advertising driven. So, all right. I mean,
look,
it doesn't necessarily mean Miami. It just means they're talking about.
Let's take because I was in two long conversations, not short ones, about this. So this is something that's going around behind the curtain. For example, let's just take Iowa and Minnesota, right? Iowa City's fan engagement, Iowa Hawkeye fan engagement is how many levels higher than the Gophers fan engagement? 6, 7, 8, I was more valuable than Minnesota because of its fan engagement. But you know what? The Big Ten, the blend for national advertisers, they like the fact that Minnesota, is a big market, right? The Twin Cities, 17th biggest market in the country. You see that all through the Big Ten, right? They have blended this to satisfy all types of interests within the Big Ten. So what was told to us, if it happened, we don't know if it's going to happen, but if it happens, if it goes to a Florida State situation, because North Carolina is unattainable for the Big Ten we're looking at, and Notre Dame unattainable, a better blend for Florida State, told to me, is what Fox Sports would want is a Miami of Florida. Plus, it'd be a better blend for the Big Ten presidents to vote for. There's a whole myriad of reasons. So yeah, I would. Yep, go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off, but just kind of what I'm catching from this, and tell me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but you're actually saying to me that Fox likes Miami better than Clemson.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Kind of sounds like you're saying Fox likes Miami better than Clemson.
With Florida State, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I mean, Florida State, I consider that Big Ten. Like that's
yes,
done. That's,
I would say yes.
The whole CFP thing sealed that for me. I could have moved on and get Florida State to the Big Ten, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say Clemson, and if Miami's come into it and they're saying Fox is saying we prefer this, I don't think Georgia Tech's in the talk anymore. So I'm just putting that out there. Like I know I've said a lot about it, but I don't think it's in the talks. So this would be kind of like Miami is being compared to Clemson, and Miami is found to be the better choice, right?
With Florida State, yes, and with the and probably with the presidents. Now, does that mean the door's shut on Clemson? No, but in the scenario that we're talking about, that people are talking about, Miami, Florida would have Fox Sports in their corner, not Clemson, even though the fan engagement with Clemson is a lot higher than in Miami. But if you but you get the fan engagement. It's the blend of Florida State and Miami, what they give to all the different interests in the Big Ten. Washington and Oregon delivered things to different interests within the Big Ten and Fox, right? Right. Washington and Oregon are not the same, but together they were able to feel the interest to everybody. They both came in as a half share. That's the type of situation that Miami, Florida, and Florida State could get through the door in the Big Ten. It's that blend.
Yeah, I get it now. I just need to understand the framing.
It took me a while to get it.
So now what you're saying, I agree with, because I've been saying I don't think Clemson is near as high as other people are saying, because we just saw the drop in their ratings that coincided with the drop in their record, their success. That's not a good thing to see at this point in time. It brings up a lot of doubt. And but with Miami, they haven't been that good. But just their brand, they get decent ratings, and when they have a good matchup, they get great ratings.
Now, I would, again, I want to put out the door not shut on Clemson, but it isn't. It is not shut on Clemson.
Sure.
It could go a different way where Florida State wouldn't become available, or, it's Florida State and by God, Notre Dame walks through those doors and it's Notre Dame and Florida State and the skids are greased so much that they say, oh, let's bring in Miami, Florida, another school. Something like that, or Clemson, another school. But it was told to us by different people who are very separate from each other, people that we trust, that Miami of Florida is and we talked about over the last year how serious a Miami of Florida candidacy would be to become a Big Ten member, right? We all talked about it. But it is they are, along with Florida State, it's the blend that would get both through the door in the Big Ten. And because we went through this with Oregon and Washington, we're taking it very seriously because the same people who told us about Oregon and Washington are telling us about Miami of Florida would be a good blend with Florida State, and Fox Sports would like that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still not necessarily believing that Big Ten president would want Miami, but I do believe that they would probably look at Miami above Clemson. And
Got it.
and I think for folks listening, I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. You certainly hear more about this than I do. I'm just saying people can actually look at this as just as much kind of a discussion about Clemson and where they're at. If Miami is coming in by Fox, because that's basically saying that Clemson's top thing that they bring is still not good enough. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think for Clemson, and again, there's so many caveats to this, but for Clemson to go into the Big Ten, it would be easier for Clemson to go in with a school that brought a big market. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because
so like
Clemson and Florida State kind of fulfill the same role.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just Florida State's better at it.
Yeah. Yes.
This is just what it is.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I don't really have much more than that. I mean, after the past few days we've had, it's kind of nice for things to be quiet. But
yes, it is, and it will be quiet. I don't think we'll be coming on live tomorrow or the next day. But if there's breaking news, we will. But yes, this is an opportunity for Immaculate and everybody else to get their final thoughts out there before it ramps up all over again December 26th, Tuesday. Because Immaculate, we're going to be hearing about this Florida State court thing. We're going to know a lot more Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday than we do now. Where it all, I don't mean the final result, but who's got the upper hand, who's got home field advantage.
I'm once again on the side that I think this is getting settled. I think the bombshells we've talked about plenty, both your show and also on the other show, I think that's enough that this isn't going to court. I mean, that was a bombshell we didn't know about. What else is there?
Yeah.
Is more? Maybe this was something that the ACC thought was a bluff, that they wouldn't bring this kind of stuff out in the public. But to me, that was you're basically saying that the ACC broke their own bylaws in their business. So that makes it really hard for them to try to enforce anything.
Yeah.
I think they have to go to settlement at this point. I could be wrong. I am not a law practitioner, as I'm saying these days, but
yeah.
I don't see it. So that's all I really had. That's very interesting that Fox coming out and saying we prefer Miami over, basically at this point of the choices over Clemson. So cool. I thought it was very interesting. That's why we had to make the change in the Holy Smokes Theater. I agree with you. Interesting, a little surprising. Immaculate, thank you for the phone call, sir. We'll be talking to you next week. Will do. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, good. Adam Briggs, thank you for the super chat. Myth, big numbers ensures only a few leave. Reality, FSU, some others pay fees to leave, and other schools fight to leave for much less. Florida State has shown them how to cover it by numbers, legally speaking.
Call from.
Hello, I didn't get the name.
JD.
Oh, JD, thanks for the phone call. Can you hold on 1 second?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Adam Briggs, thank you so much for your generosity, your super chat. Thank you so very much. I agree. Great comment. I do think, though, now this is just me speculating, but I think whatever, if FSU can get a settlement, get a price point with the ACC, I think that number probably will hold through for other schools as well. But I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe there's something going to be unique about the Florida State battle. But if it goes Florida State's way, they get a number that they can deal with, that number may hold through to the other schools. I could be wrong. JD, Mr. Seminole, have you been hearing anything? Anything new? You can let us know here at PATC.
On the message boards, and people have to understand as far as like on War Chant and so on, just the one thread, the one realignment thread has had over 5 million views and
Woo!
has over what, 16,000 posts. I think we're nearly on page 1,500. So the contracts, everything going on has already been, debated, theorized for almost 2 years now. So what I'm saying is now, it doesn't mean that we absolutely knew everything that FSU was going to try to do, but there were some good indicators that they were going to go the legal route. It's just sovereign immunity, all that stuff had popped up, but nobody knew about all this. One thing, and I'm going to ask you, has in your conversation, well, since yesterday, have you talked to your FSU contacts?
Since yesterday. What was yesterday?
Yesterday was Friday when the Board of Trustees meeting.
No, I have not talked to. No, well, no, I never talked directly to the person, anyways. But no, I don't have any new information. No.
The one thing that we've got on our message boards, and I'm thankful for, we got a lot of lawyers, and we got a lot of people that have worked in the media industry and so on that have written a lot of contracts, a lot of different things. So usually, if there's ideas that somebody like myself throws out there, if it's garbage, they're quick to shoot it down.
Yes.
So that's, you don't want the fandom in you to all of a sudden just take hold, and next thing you know, you got your tinfoil hat on, and you're just you've got all these assumptions that you have worked out that are just completely nonsense. So thankful for that. But one of the things that's going on is I've seen it in several circles, not just in the message board, but in other commentaries on different podcasts and so on. People think FSU has a great case, but the problem is choice of venue. It might not be expedited. I mean, it might be months just deciding choice of venue. So they're starting to lean, or actually they heavy lean, that because you're dealing with the state of Florida, and I think the signatures took place. I think they came. I think the ACC officials came to Florida for the signatures, and I think you have to do it that way. Mm-hmm. I think they'll win out on venue and being in Florida. There's a lot of factors involved, but one question that I asked one of our lawyers, and he's a very, very reputable, he's very well known. I'm not going to say his name, but was there any fraud? Did Jim Phillips, with some of the things that were going on, and there was a lot, withheld from the different member institutions, did he commit fraud? And I haven't got an answer back. And he's answered other questions. He didn't answer that one. And there was one of the other insiders that suggested he could have committed fraud. So that could expedite things. I'm not saying he did. I'm still trying to get an answer if somebody thinks that he did, because he didn't tell the different members. When he was supposed to get that 2/3 authority to do certain things and so on, he didn't get it. He didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
So was there anything fraudulent that took place? And when you're dealing with a state entity, I'm a contractor, And from myself, I have a purview of what I'm allowed to do, and if I'm not licensed in that particular area, I'm not allowed to do it. In the state of Florida, that's a felony. I'm not a licensed electrician, so I go running circuits or anything like that, and I get caught, that's a felony. So the state of Florida, as far as enforcement, they are very strict. Trust me. DeSantis and Petronas and some of them, I mean, they're in FSU's corner right now. I mean, Rick Scott is too. So I don't want to get too far out there and assume that we're talking about anything criminal. I'm still trying to get an answer if that's possible. You know, and I would love it if you talk to any other lawyers or something and get that answer, because I haven't gotten it yet.
No,
so
I haven't. There's two things though that I can, when it comes to possible negotiations turning into a settlement, there's two things that we were told. One is kind of a rule of thumb pertaining to Florida State. What people are thinking is that Florida State would settle for a higher, they would pay higher for sooner. In other words, if this can get done quickly, they'll pay a higher number than what they would imagine that they would pay. The longer it would go, Florida State's going to settle for lower than lower. So, if this thing can wrap up, if there's a strong enough case, if they get home field advantage, they go to ACC, you know, they'll settle for a higher number for sooner results. But if it doesn't happen right away, then Florida State's going to they're going to keep trying to whittle that number down. Then the second thing is, we were told, is that if these two parties, if and when they start negotiating, ACC and Florida State, we are not going to hear about it. There is not going to be leaks about it. There just isn't. We were told that they would happen like they would be lawyers or representatives of the two, ACC and the Florida State, that would be almost separate from the people who are actually going to go to the court, like to the courtroom, right? But they're going to be off in a whole different city, whatever. And if they get the nod and the wink from the representatives of ACC and Florida State to go ahead and negotiate, they're going to be off somewhere in a private island, private room, whatever. And there is going to be no leaks. So what I'm saying is, according to people are telling us, it's like we could be, you know, every news day could be, Florida State, ACC, blah, it's a fight, whatever, and then suddenly, bam, out of nowhere, there could be an announcement of a settlement because there's going to be no leaks coming out of that negotiations if and when it starts.
Oh, I believe that because, you know, one of the insiders who doesn't speak up a lot, he's gone quiet for months, but he's one of the ones that's more tied in with the people at the university. He acknowledged to someone else today that FSU's burned the bridge. I mean, they have, what's the phrase I think he used? They've burned the boats. They're moving forward. There is no boat. Yeah. In a serious, they have burned the boats with the ACC. You know, the whole date about August 15th, 2023, it had been theorized by a couple of people that, and actually our insider that's associated with the Big Ten, and I've referenced him before, one of the reasons, or I think there was a contingency even with the Big Ten they had a contingency schedule if FSU could break loose early. And even he's acknowledged that it's probably too late for that. But that's why they had put in the legal filing about announcing their exit retroactively. Mm-hmm. And so it's probably too far for that. But
yeah,
I think because they were originally going to file this before a while back, and then They held on. I think I know why they did, and like I said, I'll share that with you at another time.
Yeah.
But there was the option or the possibility for jumping in, and be playing in a new league in 2024. But I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head as far as, I think you're right as far as the pecking order, as far as 1, 2, 3, 4. But the difference is the pecking order is different than that. The difference is who's available first.
Yes.
And I think that's what FSU is trying to do. They want to be available first. They don't want to be one of the schools that are like, well, do we want to take this one or do we want to take that one? No, they want to get to be available first. That's why you talk about they're willing to pay more. Yes, they'll pay more to guarantee their slot.
Yep. And Florida State understands the lay of the land. Florida State understands what Colorado did. They were first,
Yes.
so increase their value. Because they were first, they were locked in. Big 12 was not going to exactly right. Yeah, there's a lot of other variables to all this, and the pecking order is different if one piece doesn't quite go with the other piece and all that. But you're exactly right, JD. Florida State, yep.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say I appreciate you continuing to fill us in with what you're hearing, because I've got a very analytical mind, and it's a blessing and a curse. But I remember details. And I remember details from people that I talked to that have the ear of influential people, but then also things that I read on the boards from the insiders and things that I hear from you. That's one thing I've always paid attention to. Your information checks out, and I appreciate that. And I'm able to bounce it off of other things that I hear, so I could kind of see everything kind of falling into place. And the reason I've been kind of disagreeing with you lately as far as the amount of the buyout is because there's two other insiders that I would read or talk to or whatever. They would insist the buyout is not going to be $500 million, and I knew there had to be a reason, and it's because they knew what they knew part of the legal fine. They knew part of what was going to be presented, and that made sense, and it just their level of confidence was what got my attention. But I'm thinking it's going, and this is just me personally, I think it's going to be around 180-something million. And the reason I say that is I think the only thing the ACC can legitimately claim on the Gore is up to 2027. I don't see, because that's the only thing that ESPN's obligated to. And then I think you have the exit fee. So if you add those two up and you're 200 and something plus let's just say you're able to use that same 60% evaluation on negotiated buyouts that they've done in the past, that puts you, I think, to around 160 or 180 million. It might be 200 and it might be 240 or so on. But I'm thinking around between 160 and 180, and that's my guess. And I think if that was it, they would take that like today, just to secure their spot.
Absolutely, they would do that in a heartbeat.
Yes, sir. And I don't know. You sit here. The schools. You feel a little bad. Well, I don't know. Some of these schools, I don't feel bad for at all, because they've been just cashing checks for a decade or so and haven't been doing anything to increase the brand. But I also am frustrated at the ACC because they haven't really done much to grow the brand. They've just made sure that they exist. Their existence was the only thing that mattered to the actual headquarters. Not growing the brand and growing against the SEC or in competition with the SEC or any of the others. But anyway, all right, well, I've said enough for tonight. I appreciate it, sir.
I'll see you next week, JD. Appreciate it.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Beautiful. You
All right,
too.
talk to you. All right.
Great call by JD PATCs, Mr. Seminole. Opie, it's hard for me to believe that the SEC would just let the Big Ten have all of Florida except for Gainesville. Just boggles my mind, but they are quiet, maybe too quiet.
Call from
KV.
KV, can you hold on 1 second, sir?
You got it.
I appreciate it. Just boggles my mind, but they're quiet, maybe too quiet. Yeah, it's it would be hard to believe. But then again, if the SEC is circling their wagons and doing a lot of things at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill to make sure they get their number one target, yeah, it is hard to believe that, Opie. I do agree with you. Thank you for the super chat. Now, on the other hand, though, is University of Florida going to be putting out the welcome mat for Florida State or Miami of Florida? No, they're not going to. And I think they might hold a little bit more internal political power in the SEC than Texas A&M when they complain about Texas. Plus, Texas A&M didn't know this Texas thing was happening. Florida Gators have their eyes wide open. But thank you so much, Opie, for your super chat. Appreciate it. Tony, I have the Big Ten adding Florida State and Clemson. I have as much confidence in that as my Big Ten staying at 16. Maybe I'll be right this time. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Tony. Appreciate your generosity once again. Gopher Tony, super chat. Thank you so much. KV, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. The floor is yours.
Yes, sir. About a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, I called you and I told you that David Smoke reported that there was an out clause that he had was the bombshell of they had the option to renew in 2027.
Yeah, I either didn't remember it or I didn't believe it. I probably didn't believe it. Right?
Oh. Well, I don't know. You said you were going to do a deep dive into it, and I didn't catch your show the next day, so I don't know if you did or not.
I did a deep dive on Florida State. I came the next day or the day after, and I said, Florida State's not leaving the conference. They're not leaving the conference by the end of the month. But that's all I said. I did not go into. Shame on me. Shame on me. I did not poke and prod on that. If I did, I don't think anyone would have said, Greg, yeah, that's in there. Because everybody that I ever talked to was absolutely floored that nuclear bomb went off. But obviously you knew, Smoke knew, and yeah, that's a big deal.
Well, he followed up on Friday during his show, and he said that a conference official told him that. So that's where he got the information from. Was
because I would speculate. This is just me speculating, but that information, again, I'm speculating, may have been in the media part of the contract that's in the vault that none of us have seen. So only a conference official would have known that. Because I can tell you, every media person that I talked to, nobody knew that was in there. So that was good of Smoke that got that conference official to be able to give him that information. I wish I would have followed up on it. I wish I would have followed up on your phone call. If I did, I probably would have ran into a brick wall and said, that's not in there, blah, 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 blah. And I would have been wrong. So, yeah, that was big, sir. That was real big.
And then yesterday or the day before, you reported that Notre Dame's share of the ACC network revenue, and that seemed uneven compared to the rest of the conference. Like 80% of what ESPN is paying them for their media rights did that appear that way to you as well?
Well, I didn't. I remember the projected payout from the ACC to Notre Dame in 2026, I believe. Was it 2020? Yeah, it was 2026-27. That was the last year that was listed. It showed Notre Dame getting a payout of almost $23 million. That's the only number that I remember. That's the only number I really looked at. To me, that seemed really high. Because...
Yeah, but aren't...
Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
No, go ahead.
It seems like right now the ACC teams are getting $23.7 million or something for their TV contract. So are they getting roughly the same share as the 14 football members?
Wow, you just brought up a really good point. Now that's 26-27 projections. So every year Notre Dame is getting about 4.5% increase in money. But I think you're right, because when you talk about 80%, because when you talk about ACC payouts to each school, they're getting in the low 30s, mid 30s, right? But that has to do with media money, which is Tier 1, Tier 2 ACC network. That has to do with NCAA conference tourney units numbers. That has to do with bowl money. And that has to do with playoff money that's going to be distributed. But now they're going to do unequal whatever. So yeah, each ACC school is making about $18, $19 million in their Tier 1, Tier 2 payments. And they're making about $4 to $5 million in their ACC network payments. So each ACC school in media money is making about that $23, $24 million, like you just said. You are correct. I think if we check that graph, I bet it would say Notre Dame's making what, 18, 19 million, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think you're right. I think when you say that Notre Dame's making 80%, yeah, you know what, man? That's too much. That's too much.
Well, that's incentive enough for them not to join another conference, because they're getting a double dip. Their ACC money plus their NBC contract.
Yes,
now,
sir.
If the ACC were to fold and go belly up, and ESPN were to back out, that seems like it would put a little more heat on Notre Dame to make themselves financially even or better than everybody else. Was the point I was trying to get to.
No, and you're making a great point. Absolutely. And we did not know this, but that was part of page 38 of the Florida State legal papers, right? Their legal filing. It was in one of the 38 pages. Florida State put that out there. Yeah, you make a great point, caller, KB.
And then I guess the last thing is Yormark seems to be more on top of things. You don't think he would actually let Notre Dame come in and have some kind of deal like that with the Big 12 to keep them to let them keep their independence, do you?
I don't know. That's my answer. I don't know. I would have said no a month ago. I would have said no 6 months ago. I would have said no a year ago. I'm not going to say no tonight. I don't know. It's something to ponder. It's a great question.
All right, my friend. That is all I have for you. I want you and the little general to have a Merry Christmas, and all your PATC community to have a Merry Christmas. It has provided me an escape during a hard economy, and I love your show.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much. Those kind words are very valuable to me. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you, KV.
Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, KV really opened up that peanut, didn't he? He cracked it open. Notre Dame, they're making they got themselves a really good deal.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, can you hold on just 1 second, sir?
Sure.
I appreciate it, Bearcat Steve. Richard L., Mr. Colorado Buffalo, Super Chat, does a big settlement by 2 or 3 teams, encourage other teams to stay in the ACC. If I was Jim Phillips, I would disperse the settlement money over the course of the years with the balloon payment in 2036. I would have said yes to this comment 3 days ago, week ago, a month ago, a year ago. In fact, I was saying this. I was wrong. I got to take the big L, Richard L., because the problem with this is ESPN has the ability to walk away from the ACC conference in 2027, according to what Florida State that nuclear bomb that they set off. So, a big settlement. Yeah, okay, there's still that incentive. Yeah, teams can cash in. They can be like Washington State, Oregon State. So there's still an incentive it's still there. But the security, the incentive to secure the future of an ACC after the big brands leave, that security is not there. Not with that nuclear bomb that just went off. So that's my answer, Richard L. Yeah, kind of, sort of, but not the way we were thinking a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, because that nuclear bomb, that changed a lot. Thank you, Richard L., for your continued generosity to this program. Thank you very much, Mr. Buffalo. Steve, what do you got to say, my man? What's happening? A lot of things going down. A lot of things are going to keep going down in the days, weeks, months ahead.
Yeah, I kind of want, and Merry Christmas to you and yours, Greg.
You too, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
I want to kind of piggyback on your last caller. Why haven't we got the details on the Notre Dame NBC contract yet? I mean, maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but why? They came out and said, we're going to be able to keep our independence. NBC stepped up, but that's all we heard.
I don't know. Does it have to do with the fact that Notre Dame is private? I know we don't get to see Notre Dame's revenue and expenditures,
right.
Although we did see it in that 38-page filing for Florida State, which the previous caller KV just brought up again. Maybe that has something to do with it, but that's a great question.
It's just kind of, since NBC's with the big, I'm just probably reading too much into it, but if Notre Dame's making projected to make what they're supposed to by 2026 or 2027, and then they see the bombshell that was dropped on the 38th page, that's quite a, if ESPN decides to do what they could do,
yes, sir,
that's a heck of a hit to Notre Dame.
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of what, again, I'm probably being too devious, reading too much into it, what could happen, but I guess anything could happen at this point. But that's just,
yeah.
Bavak was gone to Notre Dame, January 1st or next June or whatever.
Yep.
And, former NBC guy and this and that. So, there's a lot of variables that are into that. And it just makes me think that there's some other things going on back room. Maybe not. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So if there's an implosion in the ACC, and now Notre Dame has to worry about the 2027 situation where ESPN could walk away. Now, I'm assuming that Notre Dame knew that, though, right? I'm assuming all these schools...
I would hope so.
Right? It's like, I just don't know how... Or maybe they didn't. I mean, I don't know.
Well, nobody knew. I'm sorry, Greg. Nobody knew what Phillips...
No one leaked this.
Third majority vote.
Why did anybody leak this information before?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
that's the $1 billion question right now. But you know, as I've told you many times before, I don't have sources, but I talk to some people who give me a little bit of information.
Mm-hmm.
At a lot of the universities in the Big 12 yesterday, the phone was ringing off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up about everybody getting their ducks in a row. Everybody in the ACC is getting their ducks in a row. They really are.
Yeah.
And you know, basically off the record conversations were being had all over the Big 12. And
because they want to know, you know, I mean, they want to know, how hard they should be on Florida State, right? We saw Wake Forest's athletic director come out and say something. I cannot, you know, he's looking for the self-interest of his school, and I believe Boston College, somebody over there at Boston College said something, and maybe a Louisville, maybe a Pittsburgh, maybe they stay a little bit more quiet. And of course, you know, North Carolina, Clemson, and Miami, Florida are probably saying, that a baby, Florida State, that a baby, do this, let's see what happens. So, yeah. Yeah,
and if it, you know, I'll go back to your conversation with JD. I mean, if it comes to that 180 to 200 million, there's going to be a lot of other members that say, we could probably come up with that. You know, creative financing, creative accounting, we can come up with that.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying, Greg?
Yep. If the landing spot's worth, you know, yes.
Yep. If the landing spots are there, correct.
Yep.
Correct. All right, my man. The Utah Northwestern Las Vegas Bowl? I've never seen so many helmets come off of heads. My goodness!
Really? What's the score of that game?
7-0, gone almost the fourth quarter.
Okay, I mean, I don't even know who the quarterback of Utah would be, and I don't know who the quarterback of Northwestern would be. I don't have the game.
Northwestern's the kid that played at Cincinnati for a long time, Ben Bryant.
Okay, yeah.
And the kid that's quarterbacking, he's not playing now. He had a bad first half. The Barnes kid for Utah, who's in the transfer portal, but he wanted to play for Utah.
Sure.
This one last game, he pretty much got benched here the second half because he's had a tough night. Yeah. But it's as physical a football game as you're going to see.
All right,
it's crazy.
Beautiful.
So, all right, thanks, Greg.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great call.
Yep. Bye.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button if you're interested in becoming an early peak member. What gives you the early peak episodes.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas, can you hold on 1 second, sir?
Absolutely, Mr. Flugar.
I appreciate it, Mr. Ryan Thomas. If you want to become an early peak member so you can get the early drop on the Cloak and Dagger information, hit the join button.
I hit that join button, Greg.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it very much. So if you're interested, hit the join button. And again, Ryan Thomas and everybody else out there, I want to say something here before Ryan Thomas takes the floor. I did an episode 348 today. I did an episode 348 today. And for the second time, I sang a PATC's rendition of Sounds of Silence.
Yes.
Okay?
Something, yes.
Now listen to me, everybody. I've taken a lot of shots today in the comment section, on Twitter, text message. A lot of elbows have been thrown at me today for that rendition. And I want to tell you all, you better be very careful. You better be very careful because I might not sing for you guys again. And I know that you don't want that to happen. I know none of you want to be totally cut off by my singing. So be careful, everybody. Be careful with your shots you're taking at me today. You know, that's a very difficult song. And I don't know why I tried it again. Anyways, Ryan Thomas, the floor is yours, good sir.
You better not shout. You better not pout. You better not cry. I'm telling you why, 'cause Gopher Claus is coming to town. Anyway, now everybody knows that my voice is worse than yours, Greg.
Okay, all right.
But anyway, do you remember, when does the Notre Dame extension deal with NBC goes till when?
229, I believe.
Yeah,
I believe that's the only information we got.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe they could. Yeah, it's interesting because it still coincides pretty close to that 2027 option. I mean, Notre Dame. If ESPN doesn't renegotiate that, I mean, Notre Dame has probably a pretty easy out somewhere else. I mean, that's just that's just my thought. I mean, no matter what happens, I don't think anything is going to be a surprise to Notre Dame because they're going to be well prepared for it. And I get the feeling that they probably see things that the rest of the conference members don't see. But anyway, that's a conspiracy theory for another day, Greg.
Yeah.
Now, as far as what I have been thinking about this, the more and more I look at this, the more and more it is in the best interest of the ACC and Clemson is to settle with FSU. I mean, going to the mat on the grant of rights, that's a big risk if you're the ACC. Because, I mean, if you lose that, then, basically that makes it easy for everybody to get out. And for Clemson, that puts you in line behind a Georgia Tech or, others that, may not be able to come up with the same amount of money to get out. So if you're Clemson, you want Florida State to settle this at an amount that you can afford but others can't. So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. But, golly, I imagine, and I think Florida State's hoping this gets settled. But, boy, you got to be thinking if there's other schools in the ACC that are kind of shocked by some of this stuff or concerned about some of this stuff, and maybe some of this was new to them as well, you got to think there's going to be a lot of pressure to blow this thing up if, certain schools think that they can land somewhere else. I mean, there could be a lot more lawsuits coming, Greg. I mean, this thing is, this is like a 1975 Ford Pinto, running taped together on duct tape. So, I mean, this is not a stable situation. And, I just have to sit there and say to myself that, I'm just absolutely floored that the conference commissioner broke his own bylaws. I'm just absolutely floored. I'm absolutely floored that anyone in the ACC, and yes, it is part of Florida State's council, but what kind of legal counsel would say, okay, don't give me a copy of the executed Gore, or don't give me a copy of the executed, or don't share with it. What kind of legal counsel would permit, not being able to keep a copy of an executed document that you signed, in your files? It's crazy to me. I mean, I don't know what kind of clown show they're running over there at the ACC. I mean, it sounds to me like it sounds to me like John Swofford was a closet Larry Scott. I mean, and it sounds to me like Jim Phillips is trying to do his very best. George Kliakoff. I mean, what kind of? These guys. It's a joke. I mean, it's a joke. I mean, Larry Scott I thought was terrible, but John Swofford saying, "Hold my beer, Larry." I mean, I don't know, Greg. It's just crazy because when I listened to that entire a meeting yesterday, and then I sent you a link from another guy that gave a pretty good explanation of all the jurisdictional stuff with this stuff with FSU in the state of Florida or the state of North Carolina. But I'm just I'm just floored. I'm absolutely floored, and I'm surprised. I tend to believe that Phillips unilaterally extended that option extension to 2027 to ESPN because, I mean, if you're a school and you're in there and you have I would want my legal counsel to go up to North Carolina and be a part of hearing what's going on with those ESPN negotiations because I want to know what I'm getting into. The lack of legal due diligence here, and it's common, Greg. I see all the time in nonprofits I work with. Their general counsel is generally understaffed, and they don't have big budgets for legal counsel and outside legal counsel, and it's crazy to me. I'm just absolutely floored at this, and all I can say is I'm just glad that your Mark is competent, and let's see what happens with this. But boy, this is going to be a wild ride. So I mean, hold on to your saddles, boys and girls. But anyway, take care, Greg.
You got it. I appreciate it.
And a Merry Gopher Christmas to you.
Yes, thank you so very much. Appreciate it. You too, sir.
Right.
Thank you. All right, phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. Look, that whole Florida State Board of Trustees meeting had a bigger impact on me than I could have imagined.
Call from
Dan.
Hello, the floor is yours. I didn't get the name.
Dan.
Dan, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. What do you got to say, good sir?
Well, Greg, after your great content as usual, love listening to your show. After what you're hearing about Miami and Fox, what do you think the opportunities for the Big 12 to pick up Clemson would be? And also, with Clemson and a few other ACC schools, the ACC falls apart, let's say, could the Big 12 with their other partner, Fox and ESPN, get higher pay for the teams that would be in the Big 12? And I'll hang up to listen to your show. Merry Christmas, Greg, and take care. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
You got it. Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. A year ago I would have said no shot for the Big 12, but they got a shot. I mean, 2 months ago I said no shot to get like a Clemson or a Miami. We don't know how the dominoes are going to fall. North Carolina, Notre Dame's the top domino, but other than Notre Dame, North Carolina's the top domino, but we all know what's going on at North Carolina. We've laid that out. We know the lay of the land there. They're not aligned. They're not ready. They're not doing what Florida State is doing. They can't do what Florida State's doing right now. Look, Miami, Florida, the information is they're a better blend with Florida State for Fox Sports than Clemson. And Clemson, are they really wanted by the SEC? Look, no doors are shut on Clemson, but with this information, it's a little bit of a tighter window for Clemson to get through, in our estimation. We were told by two different people, two different separate sources on this today. So this is what's going on. This is what people are talking about. Everybody's prepping. Now, does that mean that Clemson holds back and doesn't do what Florida State's doing? It might force them to get more aggressive. Remember, availability is becoming available increases your value, right? And Clemson might need to do that. So we shall see. But definitely, Miami of Florida they got Fox Sports in their corner. Still still not in the pecking order, still below Notre Dame, North Carolina, Florida State when it comes to the Big Ten pecking order. But that's a pretty good spot to be in when Fox Sports is in your corner, just like we reported for months and months and months with Oregon when we got raked over the coals by people who put up beautiful charts. But anyways, so that's what that. So now, if a Clemson, let's say, the media money's tight, ESPN, maybe if the ACC implodes, maybe SEC only adds 2, maybe the Big Ten adds 2, maybe Miami or Clemson isn't one of those 4 schools, or maybe just one of them is those 4 schools and one of the others available for the Big 12. That's a big time get for the Big 12. Big time get for the Big 12. Would that elevate everybody's pocketbooks? Would that elevate the media? I don't know. But it would not dilute the slices of the Big 12 schools if they were able to get a Clemson or a Miami. And maybe if they got both, I'm not trying to cop out on these questions, but what we do know is already incredibly complex. Add on to what we don't know, and it's an impossibility for us to really put our arms around what's going on. The Virginia Tech thing is a monster of a story. It's not being covered yet. It isn't. It will be, but it's not being covered yet. I don't know what happens there. The Attorney General has spoken in public. The University of Money Perch, University of Virginia, spoke to us. We reported to you all a couple weeks ago. He sees it almost nearly impossible. Those were his words. Nearly impossible for Virginia to dislodge themselves from Virginia Tech. Almost impossible. Someone's going to have to take both or neither.
Call from
Jen.
Jen is on the line. Mrs. Seminole, the floor is yours.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing better now that you called. I just want to say, this is Jen, Renegade Report. Is that correct?
It is. It is.
And
it is
Jen,
correct.
she was on Big 12 Mafia. Was that last night? These days are running together.
Yes, it was last night. I swear to God, I thought it was the night before, too, this morning. I swear, it's all running together. So we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, she elevated the IQ points of that room by about 35 points on average. Thank goodness, Jen. But go ahead, the floor is yours.
You're so sweet. Thank you. I love this show. I swear to God, I've been watching it for so long. I just love it. I'm a big fan.
Appreciate it.
And you guys have been so right on everything. It's so weird to just watch all these dominoes drop, and that you guys have been so right on everything. So I absolutely love it. My question is, so I'm just not hearing the same Miami stuff that you are, and I know that you guys have really good sources. So I don't know. I'm a little. So are you I got in late. So let me just preface that. Okay.
Yep.
I got into the show late. Is it Miami is now in the front row ahead of Florida State, or are we saying coming with Florida State?
No. Okay. So the Holy Smokes Theater, right? That's where we put all the information in a way that's hopefully entertaining, but yet gives you the peek around the corner without burning our sources. Florida State and Clemson are on the stage. Miami of Florida has joined North Carolina in the front row. The reason why, so they're not ahead of Florida State. The reason why North Carolina's not on the stage with you all is because They don't have the ability right now
Right.
because they're
They
in a
don't.
rock fight,
Yeah.
whatever. But Miami of
So
Florida. Yep, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm hearing for like the SEC would be like, because they really priority North Carolina and Virginia, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And I'm hearing that it could be NC State and Virginia Tech to go to the SEC with them.
It might have to. It might have to. I mean.
So.
Yep.
I was hearing, and this is just me, I'm obviously not as connected as you guys are, but I was hearing that it would be that Florida State right now would not be taking like a dancing partner with them for right now. And because everybody was waiting on to see what North Carolina was going to do, right?
You bet. Yep.
And at the end of the day, I don't know, and I'm only saying this, and I'm not trying to troll anybody because I know I am really good at that. But with Miami, I've heard that like Florida State is not going to do a whole lot to roll out the red carpet for them to come with them. And so I was kind of hearing if North Carolina falls through, I think there could have been a way for Georgia Tech to worm their way in.
And we're not really disagreeing, except we're not, except for the Georgia Tech part, because I agree with everything you just said. Look, the pecking order for Big Ten is always Notre Dame number 1, North Carolina number 2, which doesn't look like it's going to be attainable. Okay, so then it's Florida State. And Florida State, if they get the deal that they can get with, the settlement, they get a price point that's agreeable, whatever. They get freedom. They go to the Big Ten. Big Ten is very interested, Florida State. But then what we heard was Miami of Florida is a way better blend combination of Florida State that Fox Sports is in the corner of Miami if it gets down to that situation, just like they were with Oregon, okay? The problem with the Georgia Tech, and the reason why they're not getting reported on, and everybody that we talk to say not Georgia Tech, is Georgia Tech would be the same thing as Miami, Florida, right? They bring the big market. The problem is the Big Ten does not bring in a university that's second in a market, even as big as Georgia, Atlanta, right?
Okay.
They're so far below Georgia. Now, Miami's its own market, its own universe, away from Tallahassee, away from Gainesville. That's the reason why. Again, both of them don't have the fan engagement that Florida State has, right? They don't have the brand,
Well, we know that about the fans. We know that.
Yes. So again, when you missed what was emphasized to me and what I reported on, we did have a part 1 of the show, but the internet went down. So this is part 2. So a lot of people missed the monologue, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But see, the Big Ten is set up a lot different than the SEC. One of the big differences is the advertisers themselves. They get national advertisers. The SEC gets a lot of big-time regional advertisers. Okay? And some of that overlaps, of course. But the Big Ten, the Big Ten saw, for example, a Florida State, Miami of Florida combo would be a lot like Washington and Oregon combo. Oregon has a fan base, engagement, brand, Seattle has the media market that the national advertisers would like to be added onto, plus the big research university, yada, yada, yada. Tallahassee, Florida State, huge brand, the biggest one, the ACC, if you don't count Notre Dame. Incredible fan engagement, viewership, intensity, ticket sales, t-shirt sales. And then the big market, make the blend would be in Miami or Florida if the Big Ten can't get North Carolina and Notre Dame. Jen, if you look at the Big Ten, if I'll let you have the floor. I just want to make one important.
Oh no! You're fine. Please go ahead.
The Big Ten has this blend of universities. They're all big research universities, but they have this blend. Lincoln, Nebraska, fan intensity, bam, bam, bam. Iowa City, but they also have these big markets, and they've blended it so they can fulfill the interest of everybody in the Big Ten. The Big Ten presidents, the alumni, the boosters, the media companies. So it's like a blend that, unlike the ACC and other conferences. So Miami, Florida, Florida State, the blend is a better combo than a Florida State Clemson blend.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I get that. I absolutely get that. And I also was hearing that Clemson was going to be left out of this, to be honest. Because, well, the academics for the Big Ten is not really there. And I agreed with your point earlier. I think when Florida State was snubbed, Clemson should have made that move earlier. I watched your show a couple days ago, and that's, I think you said that. You were like, Clemson really should have come out in front of this, right? They should have.
I think they still might, but they better. You know, I think they will. And I might.
But they haven't. Like, they haven't said a word.
Yeah, I might take the L. That's why we did episode 348 today. When I sang the sounds of silence. I don't know if you've.
I watch all your shows. So all I'm saying is, like, I really agree with you on that. I think Clemson really should have gotten out in front of this.
Yes.
Because right now it looks to me like they could get left out. And I'm just going to say, like, I always make the joke that the ACC is like the UN, right?
Yes.
That the other ACC teams look at Florida State like the Americans, right? They make them come in and do all their dirty work, and they allow them to take the bullets and be the villains and be the bad guys, right?
Yes.
And then they just hold their coats.
Yep.
And then ride their coattails. Yep. And I know I'm a homer. I'm a huge Florida State homer. I'm not going to lie about that. And I do dislike Miami. But I could see Miami, obviously, in the Big Ten. I think because of their academics, their fans are nothing like actual people that went to the school, guys. And by the way, Miami fans on this chat, you can understand this. Y'all didn't go to the school. We get it. We know. Like, we're pretty aware. So it's just, for me, I don't know. I'm just not hearing Miami. I hear, like, Miami, you know, they made that vote for Cal and Stanford. To me, that was almost the death knell for them. For Florida State to, how do I word this? For Florida State to offer them that olive branch. Because with that, with the Magnificent Seven, right? Yeah. It's rumored Miami was the one that leaked it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know
Miami.
Who leaked it. I don't know if it was Miami, North Carolina State.
Well, we know North Carolina State turned their vote, right? Yeah. We know that. Yeah. Miami was always voting with the ACC for whatever reason. I still don't understand, because they're treated worse than Florida State is, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they don't bring in the revenue, so I guess they're not really treated worse. They've really done nothing to be treated better. I mean, they haven't won it yet. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. To me, for Florida State to, I mean, I agree. It's the Big Ten for Florida State. That's what it is. Like, we know that. That's all I've ever heard for the last year.
Yeah.
That's where it's going. They're going to get their AAU status here before even the invite comes out. Like, coming soon. They've been working on that for a long time. I don't know. I mean, for me, like with Miami and Florida State right now, I think that is such a frosty relationship, and it has nothing. Again, guys, I understand Miami fans in the chat. You're going to think I'm just saying this because I'm trolling, but it's the admins, the president of the university. I just, unless the Big Ten forces them to and Fox forces them to, which I'm sure they would oblige, right? I don't know.
There's a couple points, Jen, just to think about. One is Florida State might have a frosty relationship with Miami of Florida. They might not give Miami, Florida olive branch, but USC did not want Oregon to become a Big Ten member.
True.
But it happened because it's the Big Ten, it's the media partners. It's what they want. So Florida State might not have anything to do with Miami, Florida. They might be completely alone, flying solo, and yet Miami of Florida might be your partner coming into the Big Ten.
So answer me this.
Yeah.
This is the other thing I'm hearing. If it is Miami to come with Florida State, the one thing I did hear that if it is Miami, it would take another 2 years after Florida State leaves. So it wouldn't be immediate.
I wonder why that would be.
I think the Big Ten would like Miami to get their facilities, maybe.
Yeah.
Or at least a plan for a stadium, or at least, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I could be hearing totally wrong things.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that's what I've heard, that if it's going to be Florida State and they want Miami to come with them, that it would be maybe a year or two after Florida State starts playing in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I don't, the whole stadium thing and the fan engagement thing, that's all marks against Miami of Florida. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And in regards to Florida State and AAU, that is not a hurdle that Florida State has to jump by the summer.
Well, yeah, year. I get that. I mean, they're so close to getting it, and I think that's what Clemson's drawback is. It's not that it's the AAU that is holding them back; it's how far they are from it. As far as what I've heard.
I think Florida State's fine.
Yeah,
they're fine on everything. The only thing they're not fine on is maybe they don't quite control their destiny, because Notre Dame and North Carolina would be considered one or two higher targets than Florida State. However, Notre Dame's not getting off the pot. Florida State is. The reason that Florida State is because they've gotten third-party communication.
Exactly.
From
that's what I've tried to tell people, is that Florida State would not be making these moves unless they knew they had somewhere to go.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's never been the SEC, guys. It's just never been the SEC. I've tried to tell other Florida State fans this. This has been a hot topic. I have been getting a lot of hell about it too, by the way.
Well, you've been ahead of the curve. You've been ahead of the curve.
I mean,
you've been ahead of PATC on that.
Yeah, I live in Memphis. I live around SEC fans. They automatically just think that's exactly where it's going to happen. And with Florida State fans, they really thought that's exactly where they were going to go. And I was like, I don't see it. The SEC doesn't need Florida State. They never have. They did in the 90s, and then Bobby Bowden said no. So I just, for me, I feel like for right now, this could just be me, that I think it's going to be Florida State by themselves, and then they're going to see. And the other thing I'm hearing, I don't know if anybody else is hearing this, UNC may not be as attached to North Carolina State as most people think they are. Now, they do have to go through that legislative process. They absolutely do.
Yeah.
But I think that vote by NC State made North Carolina go, we're going to take this to our legislative branch, and we're going to take care of it, and y'all can just fend for yourselves.
Yeah, we agree with you. North Carolina and North Carolina State are not at the hip as much as Virginia and Virginia Tech is right now.
That is 100% correct. Yep.
But it could happen if that October proposal passes. But then again, North Carolina, it looks like their leadership change and everything that's going on the ground there, it looks like they would be anti that proposal. So I think you're going to be correct on that, Jen, once again.
Yeah, and I think that with Notre Dame, I do think they end up joining a conference, but I think it's going to be about 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because Notre Dame is going to want to bring out this Peacock and NBC thing as long as they can, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're the only ones with that benefit. I mean, if you're Notre Dame and you bring in that money, why would you do anything else? I mean, as long as the TV networks keep coming and throwing money at their feet, why would they do anything else? Because they can go to the playoffs as many times as they want to. They lose.
Well,
right?
I shouldn't say the only, but one of the biggest near future disadvantages that Notre Dame's going to have staying as an independent in football, even with all the money they get, even with all those at-large berths they get in the playoffs, is that these conferences are becoming more and more powerful. And I think, Jen, these conferences are going to get involved along with the universities in direct payments to the student athletes. I think they're going to get like a flat fee of money because that's going to force the student athletes to become partners, not just with the universities, but with the conferences, which is going to protect the conferences from the courts, unlike the NCAA. So that's the one disadvantage that Notre Dame has going forward as an independent. That's why you see these other schools jumping into conferences. So that's the one thing I would say. But other than that, I agree with you on Notre Dame.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a couple of years for Notre Dame. They're never going to make that decision, at least not right now. And I don't think North Carolina is as wrapped up as everybody thinks they are. They do have to go in front of that legislative process. Mm-hmm. But I think the Big Ten is going to be willing to wait that out for a minute and before they force Florida State. I think this is where I'm going. I think Florida State would go without a dancing partner right now, and I think they're going to wait for North Carolina to work that out. Because I think North Carolina wants to be in the Big Ten more than they want to be in the SEC.
I would have said that 6 months ago, a year ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, because they've had a long dance with the Big Ten, with Jim Delaney was the commissioner of the Big Ten for 25 years. But the leadership has changed at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I think the people who pull the levers there are slightly pro-SEC. The board definitely is pro-SEC. They just basically kicked out the chancellor who's now going to Michigan State, Mike Gusowich. He was a silent Big Ten voice. So that's
right.
But you know what? It could flip again. I mean, you know,
it could.
Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I feel like North Carolina, values basketball a lot, right? Yeah. They value basketball a lot. And they value other sports, which are bigger in the Big Ten than they are in the SEC, right? The Olympic sports. Yeah. Okay. I think that's where that could come into play. And I don't know. I'm not worried about Miami, and I'm not worried about Clemson. I do worry about their fans because I've met a lot of them. Some of them are nice, at least on the Clemson side, not the Miami side. No offense, guys. Mm-hmm. I'm kidding. There are some nice Miami fans.
Yeah.
But I just worry about what those brands would do. If it, okay, let's put this in a whole other realm. Okay. We're going to say Florida State goes, Notre Dame just stays and, fledges around and does whatever they do. Right. North Carolina goes, okay, to the Big Ten.
Yep.
Where do you see Clemson and Miami going? Because honestly, that's the most fascinating story to me, is where they end up. Do they come into the SEC at some point? Do they come into the Big Ten, or do they merge with the Big 12?
Yeah, if North Carolina goes to the Big Ten, that causes some issues, because I don't know what the SEC does then. The SEC is targeting North Carolina. They're putting all their, I don't know, Jen.
I know.
I don't know.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, and that's the most fascinating. Yes, bye Bosworth. I do talk about Miami. I'm actually asking questions that you should be asking, sir. Okay, I'm asking questions you should be asking, and you should be worried about it.
Yeah. And
you should be happy that Florida State is taking this bullet for you.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
You should be happy.
Risks. Yeah.
So let's turn it into another situation, okay?
Yeah.
Say North Carolina stays. Only Florida State goes. Who's the dancing partner do you see with them? Or do you see them go by themselves and then wait a year for a dancing partner, as I'm hearing, and then seeing if North Carolina comes along, or do they have to pick someone else? And then see what the situation is.
If let's just say Florida State gets the deal, they're free, they strike a deal with the Big Ten, and North Carolina is going to the SEC, right? The Big Ten could wait, definitely could wait for Notre Dame to finally make a decision or whatever. And if they don't, if they continue to hem and haw, if they think they're going to rule over a new ACC or whatever, or keep independence, okay, Florida State could sit by themselves at 19. But this is where all the talk has been that I've had today with a couple other people, and this is where the Miami of Florida situation comes into play, with Fox Sports supporting Miami of Florida. That's where people are thinking the way you're thinking, Jen, and that's why they're going, okay, what's the next thing? Because cloak and dagger, SEC is working hard internally at the University of North Carolina. Like, there's stuff going on there. There's a couple of names I can't say.
I mean, it's actually been going on for a lot longer than anybody thinks it's been going on.
So
absolutely.
Just for speculation for tonight, North Carolina SEC, Florida State Big Ten, Notre Dame doesn't move. Who's that dancing partner? Florida State might just dance by themselves for a while, be the 19th school for a year. But, Miami of Florida, I think we were told, is the right blend. That's something that would get through the window with Fox Sports support. But,
and I could absolutely see that, because Florida State Miami games, no matter how long any team has been down, is a ratings extravaganza. We know that.
But Jen, I'm gonna get to another phone call here.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I did not mean to take this long.
No, I meant for you to take this much time. You can call anytime. You do an incredible job. I love watching you. You're fantastic. You bring
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you bring so much to the table. We appreciate it. Please call again, Jen. Please call again.
I sure will. I will. Probably next time you go live, I probably will call you.
That could be any time, so keep your head on a swivel, Jen. Okay.
I sure will. Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.
Beautiful call by Jen, Miss Seminole, and I'm having a hard
Call from
time with the control boards here. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm incompetent. Mowing, Mr. Buckeye, the floor is yours. Holy smokes.
Holy smokes, Greg. I had a question for you.
Yep.
Fox Sports is on board with Miami, but what does Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State think?
I don't know. Like, and that's the deal, right? Everybody's interest has to be served. The Buckeyes are going to get a big voice in this because they acquiesced it, like you and I have talked about with the Oregon, Washington additions. Florida State's going to have to wet Ohio State's whistle. You know, if Florida State is good with the Buckeyes, and we think they are, and if North Carolina and Notre Dame's not available, it might have to be Miami, Florida to get the support of Fox Sports.
Well, I mean, that's all good and well, but I don't see why they should acquiesce on Miami. We could just dance with 19 and wait for Notre Dame.
You could. Absolutely. Just like Jen said, that definitely could be in play. Because I don't think the Big Ten would have any problems at this point just staying with 19. Right?
Yeah, I don't think that you don't need two markets in Florida.
You don't, but those are completely two different markets. And again, I'm just passing along that we were told by two different places, that two separate sources. Miami, Florida is a market that Fox Sports would like to have their national advertisers. They would like to add on some that would be interested in Miami, Florida. So they're two separate markets. They're two separate universes. So I see your point. Yeah.
I understand that, but I mean, if you're going based purely on market size, you would add Georgia Tech. Atlanta's a bigger television market. Atlanta's a faster growing market.
Yes, and I think the counterpoint to that is that Miami, whatever the size of Miami, Florida, whatever the intense fan intensity that the Hurricanes have, and they don't have big time fan engagement, at least they're the number one in that market, while Georgia Tech is way below, the top one in that market, Georgia Bulldogs. So that would be the counterpoint. I haven't heard, to be honest with you, haven't heard one person say one word to me about Georgia Tech throughout this whole. I've never had them in the Holy Smokes Theater. There isn't anything there. If it is, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I'm not surprised there, but I mean, if Fox Sports is going to bring the market argument, there's going to be counterpoints that could be made to that.
Yeah, it isn't like just solely market size or value. It's the right blend with Florida State. That's the so these conversations. We did a monologue, but it was part one. Then we lost internet connection. So we explained it all in part one. We just jumped ahead in part two. But this was about, it isn't like Miami, Florida is the number 2 target for the Big Ten. This is about if North Carolina doesn't become available, if never available, if Notre Dame doesn't get off the pot, if it's Florida State, who is the better partner for Florida State? Again, these conversations are going on right now, and we were told by two different worlds of sources saying that Miami, Florida would definitely be a better blend, it would be something that Florida State something that Fox Sports would be in the corner of Miami of Florida. They would not, in other words, Florida State and Miami of Florida versus Florida State and Clemson, Fox Sports would be in favor of Florida State and Miami of Florida if those were the two options.
Yeah, I don't know that Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan would acquiesce to that for just Florida State. You'd have to bring Notre Dame to the dance. Miami would have to have some sort of agreement for an on-campus stadium or a stadium of their own. I just think there's things that Miami needs that I don't know that they're there yet.
Yep, and those are issues they might not be able to solve for quite a while, You bring up a good point. That's why Miami's not, number 1, number 2, number 3, possibly maybe not even number 4 in the pecking order. But it does seem that they're ahead of Clemson if it's Florida State plus somebody.
Well, that doesn't shock me too much about them being ahead of Clemson. I can understand them being ahead of Clemson
with Florida
because
State.
of the research.
Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
with the research dollars. So I completely understand that, but I just don't. I don't know that Ohio State would be champing at the bit to add a Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State, Ohio State's 100% on board with that. But it's interesting that Fox Sports wants Miami, or they're in the corner of Miami.
Yes, they are.
So if that's going to happen, they're going to have to do something for Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Penn State might want Miami, but I can't see Ohio State or Michigan wanting Miami.
As we reported, Fox Sports was in the corner of Oregon, and you and I had conversations offline about that, and before it happened, and it was really, important. Obviously, the Big Ten presidents, they got what they wanted. Washington, they got that. Fox Sports got what they wanted. So when it comes to Big Ten schools 19 and 20, if it isn't about Notre Dame, if it isn't about North Carolina for now, for schools 19 and 20, to serve all the interests of the Big Ten, which is a lot of different interests. But then again, the Buckeyes are going to be calling the shots, at least on one of these. If North Carolina and Notre Dame are not quite on the table, then Florida State plus, and that's where the conversation is right now. As people are prepping, people are looking at what type of scenarios. It sounds like, we had to move. In the Holy Smokes Theater, because of this, we had to move Miami of Florida in the first row. When Fox Sports wants something, now we're not saying they want them ahead of Notre Dame and North Carolina and Florida State. No, that's not what we're saying. But if the scenario that we're all talking about right now, Miami of Florida would fit in there and probably get through the window.
Well, if that's the case and they're favoring Miami over Clemson, that's probably why you were singing the sounds of silence for Clemson. They're not going to put themselves out there until they're sure they've got a landing spot, because if the SEC picks up 4, they're not going to grab Clemson.
Yeah, I want to be careful. You bring up another great. Yeah, you're probably right, but I don't think we should be shutting the door on Clemson or any other, even Georgia Tech, just because I haven't heard anything, because this thing could go in so many different directions, Moen. But I think you're. I did not do that episode because of the information that we received today, but it kind of fits more now that I think about it. Now that you brought it up. Yeah.
Well, I'll jump off here, Greg, but as long as we get Florida State, I'm happy with whoever they bring in.
Yeah.
They can bring in Jacksonville State as long as we get Florida State.
Got it. Jacksonville State's
See you,
in
Greg.
Alabama, though. Appreciate it, man. Mr. Buckeye, thank you.
Call from
Jamie Thornton.
Hello.
Jamie.
Yes.
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Good. I'm sorry. Who is this?
Oh, it's Jamie.
Oh, Jamie. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you. Thanks for calling. Mrs.
Yeah.
Arkansas Razorback is on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, Merry Christmas to everybody at PTC and PATC and yourself and your wonderful wife. So, yeah, I guess we got a Christmas present here as far as conference realignment goes. I don't know what I missed. Did I miss something the other day? I don't know. No.
Well, yeah. There's nothing really going on in college football, is there?
Right. Yeah. Well, I got to talk to Chris today, and people that don't know Chris Lowe, who is a very long-term, I've got a little bit of a relationship with him as far as with the ESPN reporter goes.
Yes. Yep.
And I just wanted to say this, he and just what was it Moen that was just on, I believe, that you just had on?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. To his point, he told me that 100% I can tell you that Florida State and Clemson is out. Didn't say Miami was out, but Florida State and Clemson. More than likely. He said, you can't ever guarantee 100% of these things, but 99.9%. And to your point with North Carolina, there is so much going on with North Carolina. You've said it, and I can't tell people enough. It's UNC or nothing at this point for the SEC.
Yeah.
They are very, very happy at 16.
Yeah.
Like Sankey said.
Yeah.
But this is turning into a bit of what he told me, this is turning into a bit of a Texas and Oklahoma situation. And if people don't know, Oklahoma begged to bring Oklahoma State along. And we know the situation with Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Yes.
This is turning into the SEC wants North Carolina and Virginia.
Yes.
And if they love North Carolina so much, they're willing apparently to even wait a little bit for Virginia. But if it comes down to they can't be separated, the SEC is going to take two schools out of North Carolina, and it may not necessarily be who you think. It was another thing. I said, "Does this got something to do with Duke?" And he said, "Well, just look where the interim chancellor came from." Those were his words, which I believe he did come from Duke. So there's apparently they are looking at North Carolina and Virginia, and if they can't get Virginia, North Carolina, NC State, or North Carolina, Duke over Clemson, of course, they know FSU is gone.
Yeah.
They know it's just Big Ten chalk at this point.
Yeah.
Sankey still likes Miami, and you made a great point about Miami. FSU and Florida really do. They share literally the same media markets. They literally cover the northern and central Florida, but Miami is its own thing.
Yeah.
Miami is its own market, and that's why he said, again, I even made the comments going back, Sankey likes that as a possibility if all else fails, but I really do believe Miami will end up in the Big Ten, and I think a lot of it has to do with networks, too.
Yeah.
There's something about Miami being a national brand still. I know it's not the U what it used to be, but I really do believe that from a network perspective, from an eyeball perspective, they just – I don't know. I think Clemson, the way things have been going, and maybe if Clemson was staying where they were, consistently in these national championship games, maybe things would be different for them. But I hate to tell you, Greg, it really looks like they could be stuck with going to the Big 12 or what happens. Now, I want to say this real quick, too, because I think you nailed it. The thing in all this, right, that we don't know is that whole 2027 provision where if ESPN walks away. So let's just say ESPN decides to do that. let's say that's true. Let's say ESPN in 2027 says, you know what? They made the deal with the devil. We've gotten more than our money's worth out of this deal. And these schools are starting to leave. And the ACC, and they just walk away. What happens then as far as what does ESPN want? Because we know that they're all in on the SEC. So let's say North Carolina, whichever one of those schools goes with them to the SEC, do they want to add 2 more? Do they want at that point? Because they know essentially they have part of the Big 12 and they have the SEC. That's where all their money's going to. So, of course, they're going to be happy to pay for those schools to go to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. And Brett's
yes.
going to be happy. But will they want the SEC at that point if they have to do that go to 20? Because I can tell you right now, the SEC is just, if it's up to them, if it's up to Sankey, they're going to go to 18, and they are indeed going to let the extra games in the schedule pay for these schools. In other words, they only have an 8-game schedule right now. You know, they can go ahead and ESPN wins by, essentially it's a win-win because they can go to a 9-game schedule or 10. I don't think they will. I think it would just be a 9-game for them and let those extra games pay for the 2 schools they want to add. So it's going to be interesting to see. But
yeah,
I can tell you,
Chris Lowe is correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a little bit more optimistic about Miami of Florida than he is Clemson as well, correct? When it comes to
100%, and that's what he was talking
about.
You can
even, I think he is. So
yeah, you can even listen to his previous on-air interviews on ESPN. He talked about that. You could go pull those up. He's mentioned that Sankey, when he wouldn't give who, well, we'll put it this way. He kept getting pressured to ask, from about the last 12 months about who the SEC is going to go after. And he just said, I can tell you who Greg Sankey likes on his list. And they said, yeah, please give it to us, right? He said, number 1, North Carolina. Number 2 was Miami of Florida. So there might have been something at that point that was going on where they didn't think they could get into Virginia. No. They'd love to have UNC Virginia 1-2, but maybe he sees the writing on the wall with the whole Virginia Tech thing, where they can't split apart. So, yeah, and I think, like you said, I think a lot of this we got to realize that a lot of this has to do with what the networks want. Remember, the networks are the ones that are paying for these schools to come in. And if let's just face it, no matter if it's the SEC, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, now Texas, or if it's the Big Ten with Ohio State, our boys from Minnesota, Michigan, Penn State, all of them, they're only going to let the pie. They only want to share that pie if there's more of them to eat.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to remember in all of this. It's easy to say, well, that school, it's easy to say FSU and Clemson would fit better in the SEC or North Carolina would fit better in the Big Ten, but that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is all about, what these schools covet, what the media markets, the media players involved covet, and are they going to pay for it, and are they going to give each school more pie? Because if they don't give each school more pie, then guess what? It's not happening.
Yeah. All righty, Jamie.
But speaking of pie, Greg, I hope you and the little general have an amazing Christmas. I'm sure she's going to make some great pies and whatever for you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun to watch in 2024. But, it's one last thing that's going to be interesting. If we don't see too many schools leave, let's say they don't. Let's say they keep the ACC together. ESPN doesn't opt out. And we see 2 schools go to the SEC, and we see maybe, I don't know if Notre Dame will by that point, but even if they grab a Miami of Florida, that might really help the ACC here in this case. If they only lose 4 and ESPN doesn't opt out, the ACC might not be dead yet. Because if it's going to all depend, it's all going to depend upon what does FSU have to end up paying. What's going to be the negotiation amount?
Yeah.
Right? Because the question's going to be, is it going to be too much for those other schools that want to go to the Big 12, like let's say Clemson and Georgia Tech and those schools that want to get out? Yeah. Is it going to be worth it for them to pay that to go to the Big 12?
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. You got it, Jamie. Beautiful.
All right. Thanks, Greg. You have a great one.
Another great call,
Merry
Jamie. Arkansas. Look, Was I expecting to have a live show tonight, reporting a change in the Holy Smokes Theater where Miami of Florida is sitting in the front row with North Carolina? No, I did not. Nope. Wasn't even going to have a live show. But I had a discussion. Then I had another discussion, and then I had another discussion. And it was all leading the same thing. Different people, different walks of life, going through, and it just became, look, if the Big Ten, it's going to take something pretty special for the Big Ten to make a move, to add on, to expand, just like the SEC. There's something special for the SEC is North Carolina. There's something special. And of course, Notre Dame is special, that's something special for SEC and the Big Ten. For something special for the Big Ten is Florida State. If they can't get North Carolina, if they can't get Notre Dame, it's Florida State. What is the best blend with Florida State? That's what people are talking about when it comes to the Big Ten side of the ledger, when it comes to the Holy Smokes Theater, when it comes to this, and it's Miami, Florida. So we had to make a move. We had to put Miami, Florida in the front row. When it comes to the SEC part of it, well, it's just a lot more simple to talk about. There's not much there. They've circled their wagons around North Carolina. We see all this stuff going on. They're happy at 16. They'll stay at 16. But if they get North Carolina, there's something special. North Carolina, and then what do they need to do? Like, is it North Carolina and North Carolina State? Is the turtle politics in North Carolina? Then you got Virginia. So it all gets really complicated. Something that we really can't break down right now until events tell us what's going on. So the SEC side of it is just, there's not a whole lot there because it's North Carolina and then what's happening internally at the state of North Carolina and the state of Virginia. The Big Ten's a little bit more involved because, Notre Dame, if they don't make a move, it still doesn't look like. Then it's Florida State. And what's best with Florida State when it comes to all interest within the Big Ten? Today, it all lined up. Everybody agreed with each other. And I'm talking with them each separately. They're all come from different worlds. And it's Miami, Florida. Not Clemson. Not anybody else. Miami of Florida, Florida State. If North Carolina still continues to be unavailable, which it looks like, and Notre Dame continues to be unavailable, which it looks like.
Call from
Bobby,
the floor is yours. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
it's been a long time, Greg. First of all, as a Hawkeye, I need to congratulate the Gophers on their win in football earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it. 5-7 Gophers, baby.
What's that?
5-7 Minnesota Golden Gophers.
That game got you into a bowl game.
Yes.
That game got you into a bowl game.
Yeah. Yes, it did. But we also lost in a last-second incredible touchdown miracle play by Illinois, and
yeah.
So I don't know. It all evens out.
That's life in the Big Ten West.
Yes.
And I also need to congratulate you, Greg. Just the last couple of weeks, look what you've built. I mean, just congratulations. The calls you've had are so high quality. You just deserve lots of kudos on all this stuff, Greg. I mean, just very seriously. Just to back up what you're saying, and I don't have sources like you have sources, but I do have a couple of friends who have like third cousin kind of Miami connections, and I would just say enough to say that I think Miami thinks very similarly to Florida State on all these things. And where Moen maybe isn't that excited about Miami, sometimes you have to take the people you can take, the friends that don't want to come.
But the other thing, just as my brain works on this, if the Big Ten in this takes Florida State and Miami, I think that is very similar to the Pac losing USC and UCLA, because all of a sudden the ACC won't be in Florida. And how long will any of those schools want to stay in that conference if they're not in Florida?
Yeah, that's a great point. Boy, is that a great point. Holy smokes.
If you can't recruit Florida, why stay?
Wow.
I think that's going to have, at first it will look like, oh, it's just two schools. It's just Miami, it's just Florida State. But it will have the impact of USC and UCLA where all of a sudden you're not in Southern California.
In other words, first of all, it's a brilliant phone call. Second of all, basically ESPN with that nuclear bomb that went off, they probably would walk away in 2027.
I think the way that read is they have to declare it by the end of 2025 what their intentions are.
Yes, sir.
But why would they stay there when you've just lost the biggest rating state out of the ACC?
Yeah.
And as much as Miami doesn't draw locally to fill their stadium and all of that,
that's all
Miami is the biggest fan base outside of Notre Dame in the ACC. A lot of people will be shocked by, no, they don't go to the games. They probably don't all live there. They live all over the place.
Yeah, yes.
But when you actually measure fan base size, Miami's fan base size is now they're not as active as Florida State. You can get and they're not as active as Clemson's fan base.
Engagement is low, yes. Yep.
But they're bigger. And that's why when they play some of these teams, their ratings are good. They have a national draw, and their ratings are good because their fan base size is bigger than their local fan engagement.
Yes. Yes. And the main point of emphasis in these conversations today was, so like the Big Ten got huge national advertisers, right? And that's why the Big Ten network is still so profitable, even though subscription numbers have gone down like every other channel. Their ad rates have gone up because the national advertisers love to go on the Big Ten network. The Miami market now brings in a whole possible nother slice of the national demographics. It just adds to this blend that the Big Ten has, and Fox Sports would, if the opportunity arises, if Notre Dame and North Carolina, if they're unattainable, that Miami, Florida is the best blend with Florida State. So, and you're making a lot of great points.
Oh yeah, well no, and the previous caller who said the SEC has interest in Miami because of the market, because while there are tons of Florida and Florida State fans down there, don't get me wrong, they don't penetrate that market like they could if they had Miami. I mean, it really is like a different world when you get to South Florida. Even the SEC has interest in Miami for that reason. And and I've just myself. Well, I've always kind of suspected, and other people have written this, and I don't know if it's true or not, that I wonder if Miami's greater interest doesn't signal Notre Dame's greater interest. Because there's always been this idea they're kind of tied behind the scenes, the Catholics and convicts thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much they're tied.
I don't know either.
There's some similarities, both being...
Well, they're private schools.
Yep. One of the things about Miami, Florida, is their president is very passive. He's originally, I believe, he's from California. I believe he was part of, if I got my information right, he's even served with the Mexico's government in some capacity. He was all for Stanford in California because of his California connections, and he's really passive on this whole thing. But everybody behind that wants Miami of Florida to be aggressive, of course. So Miami of Florida has a little bit of the same issues as North Carolina. They're not quite aligned on this, but that's what I've been told today and other days, but again today. So
yeah, I think inside the building they're very, very similar to Florida State. I think they're just a private school, and yeah, they didn't necessarily want to be the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But but I think inside the building there, and I also think inside the building there, they see, and this is just like I say, third-hand information from but I think they see the world similar to Florida State, where the Big Ten's financial setup is better than the SEC's financial setup in their mind, where it's national brand, using multiple media partners across various platforms to generate the greatest funds. To me, if I'm the SEC, I am terrified of one thing. If ABC, and they've tried to do this a couple times, if ABC ever sells ESPN, because all of a sudden your broadcast, because if ABC ever sells ESPN, all of a sudden, I mean, ESPN would still have the SEC, but ABC could go do whatever they wanted to, and they could make other deals with the Big Ten.
Yeah.
That would be this, and ABC has tried to sell ESPN in the past. This has happened.
Yeah.
And I could easily see where if Disney gets pinched, and they're looking for valuable things to raise money, and they see ESPN, still losing, maybe they sell them to an Apple, and the initial media thing would be, look at Apple with ESPN, but then watch ABC turn around and sign for one or two games with the Big Ten or the Big 12. And what does that actually do to the SEC when all of a sudden your only media partner is cable and internet, and you've lost all your broadcast? That would terrify me if I was the SEC.
Yeah.
When you only have the one partner. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I got a feeling that that the next version of the SEC, the next media deal, I don't think it can be all on one ESPN family of networks, Disney family of networks. It's got to branch out a little bit, right? I mean,
yeah. So what I just laid out,
yeah.
You are so vulnerable.
Yeah.
You are so vulnerable. If that, like I say, if all of a sudden ABC in the middle of this media deal sells ESPN, what does the SEC do? They're locked in until the end of this contract.
Yeah.
Imagine them not having any broadcast for 2 or 3 years because they're locked into ESPN. Yeah. They've made this. It makes them very vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's not just for more money. It is for more money, but it's also for self-protection. That there's no one media partner who can harm you. Mm-hmm. But the other thought I thought, when everybody's talking about, who would you add if it's Notre Dame, Florida State, and Miami? If I was the Big Ten, it's not the one I would throw in that, again, I know isn't mentioned. I don't think it's been. It would not be Georgia Tech. This is just me.
Yeah.
This is just me.
Yeah.
But if I would add one more, it would be somebody who would appeal to both Notre Dame and to North Carolina. That would be a private school that's religious-based, that also is arguably a better brand than North Carolina by their media numbers now in football and basketball, and that's Duke. Which would drop you right in the middle of the Carolinas, and just look at how you would dot the Atlantic coast with Maryland, Duke, Florida State, and Miami right down the coast. Right down the coast. Just a thought. If I'm the Big Ten, I think, and North Carolina looks like they're kind of a mess right now. You don't know.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking, if all of a sudden Notre Dame's coming and Miami's coming, and so I got 3, who would my 4th be? It wouldn't necessarily be Georgia Tech. You just did the media numbers the other day.
Yeah.
North Carolina didn't even make the top 25, and they spent the first third of the season in the top 10 in the polls.
Mm-hmm.
And Duke didn't, but they ended up in the top 25 for media ratings for football.
Yeah, they had a big game with Notre Dame, big game with Clemson, and they look great doing it, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah, Duke is a media draw. In football and in basketball, but also like I say, I'm not saying North Carolina. I know who everybody would want if they had their druthers. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, if I had to choose a 4th, and I wanted to appeal to North Carolina and to Notre Dame, it's just a thought, and it does some things for you that Georgia Tech doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think SEC thinks this way a little bit too. I think they would love to get North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, and somebody else. I think the SEC is because certainly Duke draws better than North Carolina State.
Yeah.
And again, what we're heading into is this. It's more and more about brands than it is about markets. And who's the better brand? It's just a thought. It's just a thought. It's just a wild thought.
Yeah.
I know it's a wild thought.
I appreciate it. I think we're going to wind it up. Great phone call.
No, you're fine.
Beautiful phone call. You bring
but
up
like
a lot
I say,
of good points.
I do think the long-term impact, Greg, if they will go after South Florida, the Bull, but. Yeah. Not having Florida will have a huge impact on the ACC.
Yeah,
huge.
That's a great point. Beautiful point. And
thanks, Greg.
Make it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Call again, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Wow, great call. Great call. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get yourself notified. Hit the notification bell. We can come up live at any time in the morning, during the lunchtime, during the evening. Make sure you smash that like button if you like our content. If you don't like our content, hit the thumbs down button. Hit the thumbs down button. And then let me know in the comments section or on Twitter, on X at Flug Empire. Let me know how we can better serve you to give you the best college football content possible. I want to thank everybody for coming on in this evening. We're going to be shutting it down. We've been on the air for about 3 hours. We have part 1 and part 2. If you missed part 1 because we had internet connection problem, if you missed part 1, go watch it. That was our monologue. We talked about why we had to move in the Holy Smokes Theater, Miami, Florida, in the very first row, right next to North Carolina, as Clemson and Florida State is on the stage. Because, well, there could be a scenario where Miami, Florida is going to be sitting there. Florida State's going to be dance partner number 19 for the Big Ten. Who's going to be number 20? And if the Big Ten selects 2 schools to expand, if North Carolina is not attainable, if Notre Dame still is not attainable, from what we are hearing from at least 3 different places, that Miami, Florida is the better blend, the better value with Florida State to get on to the Big Ten over other possible combos. That's what we are hearing. Now, next week, I expect there to be some breaking news, some information along the lines of who has home field advantage. I was told that these decisions are going to be made pretty quickly. The courts is going to rule on where this is going to be discussed, probably in Tallahassee. We're going to find out together. So that's going to be a big news piece next week. I also anticipate eventually Clemson has to say something. That's the one. Miami, passive leadership. North Carolina, they've got their own stuff going on. Virginia, that ain't happening. None of that is happening. They're not going to make any comments that are worth any value. But so we're looking at Clemson. Clemson is a school that can say something. I believe they should say something. I believe they should get aggressive. I believe their availability, for them to become available sooner rather than later is very important, especially when we hear this information, if it's correct, and I think it is, that Miami of Florida has Fox Sports in their corner. I think Clemson better start acting here real soon. So we're going to be looking at that. And I again, I think there's going to be, I've been wrong so far. So maybe I'll be wrong again next week. But I think we're going to get some reporting on Virginia and Virginia Tech and all the difficulties that are involved in that situation. I think we're going to get something. But then again, I'm probably going to be wrong. So thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate all the generous donations, the incredible comments, and the unbelievable phone calls. Jamie, Jen, everybody that has called, I appreciate it so very much. It's December 23rd. You want to spend time with your loved ones, your families. So I appreciate you coming on into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, through the holiday, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.